Shanann Watts, a pregnant mother, and her daughters were reported missing on October 13th, 2018, by a friend who became increasingly concerned after Shanann missed a doctor's appointment. Christopher Watts, Shanann's husband, initially claimed he did not know where his family was and even gave some unsettling interviews to local news stations pleading for their safe return. By August 15th, Christopher Watts was arrested. He'd failed a polygraph test and quickly caved, confessing to the murders. There are a million little lies along the way, and we'll get into some of those during our chat with Ted Rolands. But Chris was charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, Shanann's baby boy Nico, and tampering with a deceased human body. On November 6, 2018, he pleaded guilty to all charges to avoid the death penalty. And on November 19th, 2018, he was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 3 to be served consecutively and 2 concurrently. Investigators revealed that Chris was having an affair with a coworker at the time of the murders and wanted a fresh start. This is believed to have been a significant factor in his motive for killing his family. Now, he's back in the news after a former inmate and friend released a 3-part series of books alleging to include handwritten letters by Chris, where Chris might, for the very first time, allude to his mistress having something to do with the horrific events of August 13th, 2018. To me, in my opinion, the circumstantial evidence is undeniable. A neighbor said they saw a truck that looked like Nicole Kissinger's at Shanann's home in the early hours of August 13th, 2018. At the same time, Nicole's phone pinged a tower near Shanann's house. She lived 25 minutes away and had no reason to be there. Obviously, the most damaging is the fact that Nicole has no alibi for the time of the murders. She also, frighteningly, Googled how much Amber Fry's net worth was. Amber Fry was the mistress of Scott Peterson. She thought she was just the girlfriend. She had no clue. Who was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife, Lacey Peterson. What a bizarre thing to be Googling in the midst of all of this chaos. I think a lot of people are still invested in this case because with Nicole free to live her life unbothered, they feel like there is no justice for Shanann, Nico, Bella, and Celeste. We dissect some of Christopher Watts' deranged scribble and Nicole's potential involvement with journalist Ted Rolands. Ted Rolands, Court TV anchor and Victim to Verdict host. This week, I want to talk to you about one of my least favorite human beings on the planet, Christopher Watts. This was, as you know, a highly publicized criminal case. It happened in August 2018 in Colorado. He was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife, Shanann Watts, and their beautiful baby girls, Bella and Celeste, and their unborn baby. I sometimes forget that she was pregnant, and that, I was revisiting this case and appalled at the fact that there was a baby on the way that Shanann was ecstatic about. Did you cover this case from the very beginning? Like, was this, were you involved when this was just a missing person case?
I was covering it from afar. I wasn't on the ground there, but
Yeah.
this was one of those cases that instantly was the old missing person turning into a horrible murder. But you're right. I actually just reading the latest news out of it was reminded that she was pregnant, and it does add this weird other layer that the first time around maybe you're not appreciating it because you're thinking about those little ones being murdered by their father. But yes, it from his perspective, from what he did, it adds a whole nother dimension into the disgusting nature of it. And now, of course, it's taken even a grosser turn with his own behavior, which you could expect.
I know. I mean, I'm not surprised by this guy anymore. And I'm not necessarily interested in some of the things he's said. Like, I don't want to spend too much time revisiting The Cell Next Door, this new book series that's giving us a little insight into the muddled mind of Christopher Watts. I have noticed that it seems like he blames every woman in his life instead of accepting any sort of responsibility or acknowledging that he's a monster. But tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like these these updated words that we're getting from Christopher, there's a new tone when it comes to Nicole, his mistress. And
Mm.
there is so much speculation online and honestly anger online over the fact that more wasn't done to investigate her potential part. We'll say nobody's ever charged her with anything. I think that that's worth acknowledging. No one's ever charged her with anything, especially not these murders. But really suspicious behavior around the time of this disappearance, around the time of the inevitable acknowledgement of death. And he really tried to protect her up until now, when we're seeing these words where he's calling her a Jezebel and saying she gave him an ultimatum. And this is coming from The Cell Next Door, which was written by Dylan Tallman. Am I trying to read too much into Chris's words when it comes to Nicole? Because I do think that her behavior was so strange.
It's a tough leap to make. I understand why you're doing it, but I would caution you that typically in these situations, you need someone who is over the top, insane, evil, horrible, you name the adjectives. And we have that with Chris Watts. The collateral, the people around an individual like that, you can look at and with a little side eye and you wonder, but let's face it, this guy is the worst of the worst in terms of what he did, how he did it, the lies he told after he did it, trying to blame his wife, saying that she killed the kids and he just got mad and strangled her. I mean, he's so demented. And now even listening to his words, now it takes it to another level where again he's blaming his behaviors because of he was triggered by his wife who was so mean to him. I mean, it's him. It's him. And I would caution you not to get too
Well, don't caution me too much because I have more along the
all right, keep it coming. Maybe I'll be all in with you by the end of this.
All right, so like I said, this is Dylan Tallman, who was a fellow inmate and a former friend mate, really, at the Wisconsin prison. And they were
By
working.
the way, this prison in Waupun, Wisconsin. I
Yeah.
grew up in Wisconsin, so this was always, how when you're young, you hear about the prison in your state, and it's kind of scary. This
Yeah.
was my scary. Well, I never want to be sent to Waupun for anything. So, this place is not. It's no fun to be there. I'll tell you
Oh,
that.
that's so interesting. Like one of the original questions I'd written down, but I removed it because I thought it was a stupid question, was I thought this guy is a national known kind of monster. So to move him from Colorado to Wisconsin, I mean, is that really, and now you're telling me that this is a really scary prison. Um, is he safer in Wisconsin than he would have been in Colorado?
Probably not, but by moving him for safety reasons, they can say they did everything they could to ensure his safety. Because let's face it, initially he was the most hated man in the U.S. there for a while. So there was a target on his head. You move him out of state, there's less notoriety within that population. They're checking boxes, really.
No, that's interesting. When it comes to this book they were working on, this prayer book, Chris pulls out. Dylan decides to turn this into really, a trash, whatever you want to call this, The Cell Next Door. I was under the impression that inmates couldn't monetize off of their crimes. What was the purpose or scheme here? And I have no idea. This was a terrible idea is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Well, each state is different in terms of monetizing after your crime. So if you spent time in prison, um, and you are reporting on what you saw with other inmates and their crimes, then there is an opportunity for you to write that. People are interested in prison life inherently. So I think that he's able to do this because he's not monetizing on his crime necessarily. He didn't end up there because of Chris Watts, but he encountered him and he's taken advantage of it.
Good point. Watts told another inmate named David Carter that he killed Shanann because he didn't want to pay child support. He didn't want the son that she was expecting total jerk, and feared his wife would take their home in Colorado in a divorce. Some argue he was purely driven by lust for Nicole Kissinger. Can't it be both?
Absolutely. And in a lot of cases, it is both. Like Corey Richins going on right now. She killed her husband, allegedly poisoned him, but there was a financial issue there too. She wanted money. She didn't want him, and she had a lover that she wanted to spend her time with. So I think the 1-2 punch is lethal, and it happens a lot because if you think about it, you're in a marriage, you want out, and there's financial constraints there, but you don't have any other life to go to. So what are you going to do? You either get divorced or you don't. You suck it up and deal with it. But if you've got that other, if you see this other whole life that in your distorted mind is fantastic, I can be with my lover who's so nice to me. My wife is mean to me. Yeah, they have 2 kids. He, you have 2 now motivations to put you over the edge to do something horrible.
Yeah, I mean, right. Immediately as you're talking, I'm thinking of Susan Smith. She had that lover
Yeah.
that didn't want children. I mean, I just was so traumatized by that as a little girl. And now she's up for parole
Yes.
and trying to convince us that she's a changed woman. No, thank you. You can stay exactly where you are. Now, you briefly touched base on this, but of Nicole, Watts allegedly said she was just everything my wife wasn't. She was just nice and not a control freak. We can make decisions together. Some have interpreted this as Watts blaming Shanann, her controlling behavior for her death and the deaths of the babies. You just mentioned this, but can you kind of go into more detail? This is not the first time that Chris has blamed his wife for the deaths of those children.
Yeah, well, at first he told investigators that she killed the kids, that she strangled them, and then he strangled her. And then, of course, they find the bodies of the kids at his workplace. Uh, he's
And that was like a really clever trick by the cops because he was giving them nothing. He failed a polygraph. And then they said, what we're going to do is we're going to suggest that maybe Shanann did it. And this was just a reaction to Shanann being the monster. And that was just like a little piece of cheese to see if he would.
right.
And I mean, and just he fell for it. Like, what an idiot.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, total idiot. And a lot of these people are idiots because you have to be to go through with this with a distorted view of the world where you think you can get away with it. That no one's going to notice that your wife and kids are dead and you're going to be able to save your house because she was going to take your house. Well, guess what? Your house is gone, your family is gone, and you're gone. You're off to Waupun, Wisconsin for the rest of your life. It's so infuriating because those little 3 of them, 3 children, never had an opportunity to live. And Shanna was dealing with a monster that she likely didn't realize. She was probably oblivious to the danger that was right there in her home. She just thought he was a lackey and a horrible husband and father, but had no. I guarantee she had no idea that this was possible.
I know, and so sad because she was trying to make it work until the very end. And that's what devastates me the most because she was so driven by love and so driven by the love of their new baby that was coming. So proud she was bringing him a boy. I mean, it just makes me irate. Now, I'll get your barf bag ready because I'm going to read some of these words. He confided in Tallman that his mistress, Nicole, became the death of me. In one letter, he referred to her as a harlot and a Jezebel. In March of 2020, he wrote in a prayer confession, "The words of a harlot have brought me low. Her flattering speech was like drops of honey that pierced my heart and soul. Little did I know that all her guests were in the chamber of death. How did I let this happen?" He continued. "The blessings you have bestowed upon me were right in front of me, and I followed the perfume of a strange woman." Okay, I guess we can acknowledge some reflection there towards the end, but still pointing the
Yeah, but
finger
he's a
at other
victim.
people.
He was called by the siren of an evil, beautiful woman, and he was a victim, unknowing he didn't mean to do all this, but it was her fault.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but this is also kind of a newer development because he's been protecting her forever. According to the New York Post, though, Watts later blames his Jezebel mistress for his decision to murder his wife and children. Tallman actually claims that Watts said that Nicole told him, follow me, to choose between her and his family on the night of the murders. Jezebel was the forbidden fruit, he allegedly said, and it was costly. This relationship is so weird to me. And according to a 2021 article in the Daily Mail, Watts told a pen pal that he was still in love with Nicole. Now, this is back in 2021, and believed that some of the letters he received in prison were from her under assumed names. Um, and I think that she sounds crazy. If that's true, she sounds crazy. Do you believe that the cops ever looked at her? Or, like you said, Chris was just so demented that this was all on his shoulders?
I doubt. I'm sure they looked at her because they wanted to figure out the relationship, and did she physically help in any way? Was she a co-conspirator in cooking this up? They had to have. And I think because there was some reporting that she was under the impression that he was going through a separation
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, during their relationship. So her saying, "Hey, dude, is it me? Or are you're getting rid of your wife and kids like you claim you are, or not? Because I'm not. I'm wasting. We're going to waste time here
Oh, so you're
if
saying that
we
he could
play
have taken
both."
that well, also in these new things, he says that for weeks he thought about Shanann dying and the like. So I don't think that this was a overnight decision the way that this kind of sounds like. Let me read some of the Nicole stats that are things I found that make me suspicious of her. Okay.
Yeah.
She claimed she had no idea about his double life, telling the Denver Post that Chris told her when they first met he was separated and that, at the end of divorce proceedings, as you just said. This is often stated as fact, yet she Googled man I'm having affair with says he will leave his wife on July 24th, 2018. I bet you she found a Cosmopolitan article. I'm just going to say that right now. It does sound like she was aware that he wasn't completely separated. She chose to delete her iMessages off of her phone involving Chris just during the missing person investigation. She doesn't, we assume she doesn't know they're deceased, and she's deleting this really important evidence off of her phone. And on August 14th, made a later deleted Google search for can cops trace text messages? Suspicious. And
Mhm.
in some of her interrogation interviews, she's been described as evasive or deceptive, including claiming memory loss about a 111-minute phone call with Chris on August 12th, hours before the homicides are believed to have taken place. She was interviewed about a 111-minute phone call approximately 72 hours later, and she doesn't remember what the topics of that phone conversation were. Don't you think that's strange?
Yeah, no, it is. It is strange. And maybe she had an inkling. I don't think that she was running the ship, and I don't think she was telling him, "Hey, you should kill him." But you're right. There's that not remembering a phone call of that length at all is the only reason you don't remember it is because you don't want to elaborate on it.
You don't want
And
her. Okay, well, I'm not done. So get your seatbelt on. She also
okay.
claimed she was unaware of Shanann's pregnancy until August 13th, 2018, the day the victims were reported missing. But she is known to have Googled her public Facebook, which had numerous pregnancy related posts. And as you know, one of the things that made this case so fascinating was the fact that Christopher's life was documented so heavily by his wife on social media. Apparently, he was resentful about that. But I mean, more than most people, I'd almost not in a negative way, but I'd say almost she overshared. And I have a hard time believing that Chris didn't think about how jarring her absence would be from her social media community. She can't just disappear. I mean, where was his head there?
Yeah, I mean, please. Well, first of all, she's got a job. She has a huge network that she's built up, not only online, but in the community. I mean, she is running the show. And he obviously had some resentment because his wife sounds like she was on fire and she was very driven. And
Ambitious. Yeah.
when you're with someone who's very driven and maybe you're not as driven, that can be a problem. I'm sure that was an issue in their marriage, and I get that, and I'm sure again before he gets the girlfriend, he's probably along for the ride. He's like, all right, honey, we'll do this, and I'll get my Pittsburgh Steelers uniform on, and we'll do a photo.
Yeah.
But now he's got a girlfriend. So to your point, is it the two of them concocting something, or is it just him? And I have to believe, just for my own sanity, so I can sleep at night, that there are very few people like him on this earth walking around, and that if you throw her in too, then that adds to the list, and I don't like that. So I am convinced it's just him, but I get what you're saying, that she might have known that something was coming, that he was leaving her maybe, or some BS that he told her in his 111-minute phone call. Um, I don't know. I mean, you raised some good points.
There's also a weird instance where he's playing phone tag with an investigator, and every time the investigator would connect with the call, it was just dead air. And so they're going back and forth. Christopher finally calls the investigator from his work phone. At the same time, we can see that Nicole is on the phone with Christopher, almost the exact length that Christopher is on the phone with the investigator. So the conspiracy is that Christopher
That she was
finally
listening.
down to call him on the phone. So he was trying to connect the calls three-way. That was the dead air. So he finally breaks down and calls him from his work phone so that she can listen over speakerphone on the cell phone. So I'm sorry, this is where we disagree. I adore you, but
But wouldn't he have, being the weak person that he is, thrown her under the bus as early as possible?
I think he really loved her. I think he's crazy. I think he really loved her. I'm not even going to get into some of the weird conspiracies about her spiritual advisor and some of the things people are saying, it the way she lured Chris in, like that is on another level. But if he really did feel this connection with her and thought that she would stand beside him no matter what happened, um, maybe he would try to protect her off the top. But it sounds like he's kind of throwing her under the bus now, just through veiled, really weird conversations with God.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, love is a horrible drug, and some people just don't take to it. And he was in over his head, but it was his decision to kill, yes, his wife. And, killing your wife is a horrible thing. It is a horrible thing. Killing your unborn child and then two little ones, a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, that is off the charts insanity. And very few people have that in them, thank God. And
Yeah.
he did, no matter what anyone else around him told him to do or didn't, he's the one that did this horrible thing. Can you imagine looking at your daughter, 4-year-old, and murdering her and having, I mean, whatever that look that
Well,
she gets back?
according to everything I've read, he murdered the 3-year-old first in front of the 4-year-old. And the 4-year-old, who I don't have children, but I imagine a 4-year-old is a little more keen to what's going on around them,
Oh yeah.
recognized what was happening and said, please, no, are you going to do that to me? No, daddy. I mean, I literally, my heart just fell into my stomach. Like I just, and he recounted though. We only know this because he's saying this stuff out loud. I can't believe he didn't want the death penalty. I mean, the only reason he pleaded guilty was to take that off the table. I'd be like, let's just get this over with if I had that on my conscience.
Yeah. Yeah. This is little Bella asking, "Are you going to do this to me?" And it reminds me of the case in Ohio, Dorman. I don't know if you know that one, where he came and he shot his kids, hunted one of them down, and
Oh yeah.
like literally they watched each other
Yes,
die.
yes.
Yeah. It's a different level of insanity. And again, it's the scary stuff that makes you lock your door at night and worry about who your loved ones are associating with.
All right. Well, as much as I adore you, if we never talk about Christopher Watts again, I will feel thankful. Why does he continue to come up in the news? Why does he continue to, I mean, is it because there are some people that really want justice for Shanann and the babies, and they want Nicole to be put away? Or is it because, like you said, we just can't process the fact that Christopher was capable of this?
He keeps coming up because we keep consuming it, because his name comes up and people read it because he is that monster. A long list of them. You know, you go back with Ted Bundy et al. These people have made a mark on us because it's so foreign from what we're capable of comprehending. And when one of these stories comes up, it sadly, any updates on it, you click it and you read it because you want to see what the monster's doing and be reassured that they're in prison. But I think that's the staying power. There's lots of inmates who would love to talk and have us talk about them, but we don't care. But when one of these people says something or does something or is written about, we consume it.
Well, we're not going to consume,
even though we promise never to do it again.
We're done with him. We're done with him. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, Ted. You're so smart. I appreciate you. I love that we don't agree on this because I think that that's interesting. If you agree with Ted, make sure you leave a comment below. If you agree with me, make sure you leave a comment below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks so much for watching.